Hey everybody, it's Kate Lester again, and you may have seen me expressing some concern about the rise of antigen tests lately. You also may have noticed that I've been talking a little bit less about new case counts, and those things are related. So I've put together three brief statistical kind of experiments to show you why I'm so concerned about antigen tests and why I believe that Denton County needs to start collecting this data as soon as possible. So antigen tests, if you're not familiar, they're a new alternative to the traditional nasal swab PCR viral tests that we've been using for COVID this entire time. The viral tests are considered extremely accurate. Yes, sometimes they miss things. That's a lot of times has to do with what your body's producing. Do you have the whatever it's looking for to detect, right? A high enough level to detect. Essentially, the viral tests are considered the gold standard. Antigen tests are considered a lot less accurate. According to the FDA, this is the accuracy, acceptability on antigen tests, okay? Antigen tests are 100% accurate when they give you a positive result. So if an antigen test says you have COVID, you have COVID. However, antigen tests are only 80% accurate on negative results. So if you get a negative antigen test, there is a 1 in 5 chance that you are positive for COVID. Now, antigen tests are fast and cheap, so they're very popular and they're taking off very quickly. And these numbers look fine if you don't understand how the statistics actually work. So let me show you from my perspective why this 80% accuracy on negative results is a potential catastrophe for keeping track of COVID statistics. So our first experiment, our first condition, okay, we've run 100 antigen tests, saliva tests, okay, and we have a 5% positivity rate. 5% positivity rate is pretty good. That's where the CDC is basically saying you can reopen schools with a whole bunch of social distancing and masking and stuff, and you should be able to do it. Currently in Denton, we're at about 20% positivity, so we're way above that. We want to get our positivity down to 5%. But what does it mean if we have a 5% positivity rate from 100 antigen tests? So, first it means that out of 100 tests, 5 came back positive, right? You with me? We know those 5% have COVID. But here's the problem. The negative tests, the 95 negative tests we've got back, only have 80% accuracy, okay? So 80% of them are truly negative, and 20% of those cases are positive. They actually have COVID and the test missed it. What that means is that you have 19 cases of COVID in this group of 100 people or 100 tests that were missed by the antigen test, okay? Of course, the positive has 100% accuracy, so we just carry that over. What this means is there are 24 people in this group who have COVID and only 5 screened positive, okay? That means there's 4 times more people who screened positive who have it. That's a huge problem. These people don't think they have COVID, but they do, all right? So are you starting to see the problem here? The true positivity of the group is actually 24%, 1 in 4 people. But from just the screening with antigen tests, we think our positivity is 5%, only 1 in 20 people. All right, that's a huge difference, and that's a big problem. So Denton County currently only tracks the PCR viral tests. They are not tracking the antigen tests. Okay, so let me show you another experiment. Our second experiment, we're going to assume that the true positivity rate, okay, what's actually happening is 25%. 25% of the tests are positive for COVID. And we do 1,000 tests. Half of them are the viral tests, half of them are the antigen test. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Half of your tests are antigen tests, half of your tests are viral tests. And a quarter of both are positive. In reality, this is the true condition here. But this is what it actually looks like from the test results. So our PCR viral tests, right, are accurate. 25% of them come back positive. But in the antigen category, we've missed 94 cases, positive cases in the first round of testing. Okay? That's the vast majority of positive cases in the antigen group. And, I mean, that is more than a third of all the positive cases in the entire population. You've missed, 38% of the total positive cases, 75% of the positives in the antigen group. And even though the truth is that in this population, 25% positivity is the reality, we're only seeing 16% positivity because you have all these antigen test false negatives in there, okay? So the more antigen tests are in the population, the more likely we are to see false positivity. So it's a useful tool, okay? So it's not a bad screening tool, and antigen tests are being used to try to open up universities and stuff to try to do quick screening. So I know UNT said that students will get an antigen test. If it comes back positive, they're considered positive, and they're put in quarantine. If it comes back negative, then their samples will be sent out for PCR testing. So medically, there's nothing really wrong with that. However, as we try to keep track of this pandemic as it unfolds, this is becoming a data nightmare. And because of that, I think that's why Denton County is reluctant to mess with this. But here's the problem, okay? Try to follow along with me. As the proportion of antigen tests increases, okay, as we have more antigen tests and fewer PCR tests proportionally, the test positivity numbers and the number of positive tests will decrease, at least the way it's reported, okay? When it's reported, these numbers will decrease, even when the true infection rate is stable. It's complicated. Let me show you one more experiment, okay? So in this third experiment, in reality, we have 25% positivity, okay? Again, 1 in 4 tests should be positive. We're doing 100 tests each time step, so now we're doing time series, okay? And in these samples, the proportion of antigen tests is increasing over time. This is a reasonable assumption. Like I said, antigen tests are faster and cheaper, and frankly, this statistical problem is not well understood at all by the population, and so these antigen tests are becoming very popular very quickly, and I need you to understand what that does to the data. So, okay, in our first time step, 100% of the tests are PCR. They're viral tests. They're the gold standard. So the true positivity is 25%. It's showing 25%. We've detected all of our positives. We've detected all of our negatives. In the next time step, only 84% of our tests are PCR, are the viral tests. And now we've started missing people. We have more false negatives, right? And as we increase the proportion of antigen tests, okay, from left to right, we get more and more of these false negatives, okay? So more and more people who are sick are given negative test results. So the true positivity of the sample never changes over time. It's always 1 in 4 samples should have COVID. However, the apparent positivity in this population, if you are including both kinds of tests, is decreasing over time, and that's not real, okay? That's a fake trend line. That's not actually happening. That's happening because of the errors in the antigen tests, okay? Because Denton County doesn't keep track of antigen tests, I have no idea where on this time series we are. It may be that only 10% of people are getting antigen tests. It may be much higher than that. We have no idea right now. Okay? So there is a statistical reason for omitting the antigen tests. I am not trying to say that Denton County is necessarily intentionally trying to be deceptive. However, statistically speaking, I disagree with them. But I'll give them the credit to say that there are reasons why this is an issue. So, okay, in that last demonstration I showed you, even though the number of PCR, viral tests decreased dramatically over time, positivity within the PCR tests remains true, okay? So it's going to remain, your positivity rate should be about accurate if you're only looking at the viral tests. Of course, if they started collecting antigen test information, they wouldn't have to put it into the positivity calculations. That's not necessarily required. If you did, that's when we see the positivity dropping, okay? If you're including both antigen and PCR tests in your positivity calculations. We definitely don't want to do that because that's going to lead to, again, this erroneous, confusing, decreasing positivity that is artificial. The other part of it that I know creates a lot of reluctance around tracking antigen tests is that we already have a lot of problems because we can't track individuals only tests. We don't know how many tests, even in the PCR data, an individual person has had. We don't know how many of those tests are repeats. We don't know how many of them are confirmatory. We can't track individuals because we don't have a universal healthcare system. This is one of the reasons we cannot watch our numbers as well as Europe can. Okay, so when you add antigen tests, where you're doing this double dipping test thing, where you take the antigen test, it's negative, then you get a PCR test, we have no way of following that. And that's going to make the numbers even more complicated and hard to interpret. But the fact of the matter is that is happening already. Okay, so not collecting the data doesn't make that not happen. So I don't think that preserving positivity and not wanting to deal with complications is worth the consequences of omitting this information. So first of all, we currently have no idea how many people may be positive but misdiagnosed, right? Like I said, I have no idea where on the spectrum we are because I don't know how many antigen tests are being administered, okay? If I knew that, at least I could build a cone of uncertainty, but right now I have no idea. And so these yellow people, these false negatives, are very likely to become super spreaders, especially since this is the protocol that our universities are apparently going to use. And we know that people in their 20s are not taking this maybe as seriously as some other groups, okay? You get a negative test result, you got a negative test result. Why would you keep quarantining, okay? So I have no idea. This is a dangerous situation, and we have no idea how prevalent this is or how likely this is to be happening in our community. So that's number one. Number two, these positives, the antigen test positives, are real positives. These are people who absolutely, definitely have COVID, and we don't have numbers for them right now. So again, I don't know if it's 3 people or if it's 100 people or more who have been diagnosed through an antigen test accurately, have COVID, and are not being counted by the county, and are not being contact traced by the county, all right? These don't get reported to the county, and therefore they're not part of contact tracing. That is unacceptable. And finally, because of both of the things I just explained, it will appear that infection rates are slowing when they are not slowing down, okay? So this is from the same experiment we just ran. In each time step, the number of cases remained constant. It was 25 cases of COVID per sample. However, what we've detected, if we've used both tests and added them together, is that green line. And according to the DCPH method, where they're only looking at PCR, the number of cases, new cases, is that orange line. It's only like, it's like half of the cases across the board. Again, I don't know where we are on this. However, as antigen tests become a higher proportion of these tests, We know that this false image of fewer cases will get worse and worse and worse. This is completely unacceptable. And this is why I haven't been showing this graph for a little while, because I can't tell if flattening or dropping is real. I don't know if it's reporting. I don't know if it's because of antigen tests. I don't know what's going on. This graph is becoming useless because they are not tracking antigen tests and we can't check it against that. Okay? So this is Denton's curve. This is Texas's curve. And I have no idea what's going on because this data situation has gotten out of control. And we're just missing a lot of important information. So at the end of the day, we need to start reporting and tracing these tests. Okay, we need to. I'm starting a campaign of constantly asking Denton and Texas why they're not doing this. Feel free to do the same thing. And at the end of the day, ignoring reality, because this is happening. This is happening right now. People are getting antigen tests as I record this. You can't ignore what's happening and call it science. That's not science. That's manipulation. So we need better data and we need it yesterday. So that is my spiel on antigen tests. Thanks, guys.